What is going on, everyone? Nostalgia925 coming at you with another Digi question episode. The type of episodes where we try to reply to some questions about either a Digimon or something related to the Digimon universe. We've already replied to many questions, and yet so many are still left unanswered. Little by little we will get there. In the Nostalgia925 community page, I showed a comment of someone named Mega Giga Peter D, who wrote the following: "We have the 7 great demon lords and the new 7 demon lords, and both groups represent the 7 deadly sins. What we really need is a group of Digimon who will represent the 7 heavenly virtues." Maybe a quick little distinction for those who do not know: the 7 great demon lords are a group of powerful mega level Digimon who each represent one of the 7 deadly sins, which are pride, envy, wrath, sloth, greed, gluttony, and lust. According to the Christian tradition, these 7 deadly sins are really crazy and can normally not be forgiven. However, according to the Bible, and it's important to note that these 7 deadly cardinal sins aren't mentioned in the Bible, but anyway, God can completely and totally forgive the sinner. The new demon lords are a reference to Silver Buller, who found other Digimon with the potential to also be called demon lords and could form their own group. I talked about them in details in a previous video. Link of it, you can find it at the end of this video. Obviously, as Digimon gave us the 7 demon lords based on the 7 deadly sins, the question is whether we can find Digimon that would work as a sort of counterbalance. Sure, the rivals of the demon lords are the royal knights, considered to be deities on their own, but I can't blame people for trying to look for a more angelic alternative. And it would make total sense if you consider how many of these demon lords were former angels. It would add up to the story and create something extremely interesting. Now, as I wrote that post in the community page, you guys showered me with your beautiful and long comments. You gave me big lists of Digimon you thought could form a good rival to the 7 demon lords, and in this video we will go over all of them, if not most of them, and see if we can find good alternatives. My most favorite list will be explained last. Let us get into it. So I haven't yet discussed the 7 demon lords in depth. It is a thing we have yet to do along with thousands of other Digimon videos. What we can do, however, is quickly go over the sin each demon lord represents. That way we know what they are all about, and it will lay the ground for certain Digimon propositions which you kindly shared in the community page. Lilithmon, also known as Leviamon, is a demon lord representing the moon and the sin of lust. Now, lust is nothing more than an intense longing, an intense or unbridled sexual desire, which may lead to fornication, including adultery, even rape, bestiality, and other sinful and sexual acts. It could also mean other forms of unbridled desires, such as money or power, but it is mostly known for the intense sexual desire. I think I already said that Digimon isn't exactly a series for youngsters, because if they truly knew what a Digimon represents, it's kind of crazy, right? Imagine that a Digimon would truly act in motivation of said sin. That would be so dirty and yet very interesting. You want to know what I think? I believe, sincerely, that the Digimon franchise could easily become as hardcore as the manga Berserk. In case you guys don't know the manga, I would say don't watch it, even if it is one of my most favorite mangas ever. It truly isn't for the faint-hearted, and if you're not afraid of a little bit of gore and darkness, then I'd say yes, read it. You'd be surprised to know how many similarities this manga has to Digimon. They have this group of demon sovereigns called the God Hand, a quantumvirate of demon sovereigns who act as executors of the idea of evil's will. As the most powerful of demonkind, they reign over apostles as their masters. Each of them were human once, just like how most demon lords in Digimon were once angels, and in fact, there is one member among the God Hand that is basically Lilithmon. She's called Slan, a sadomasochist who thrives on cruelty and the effect it has on others. She loves cannibalistic blood orgies and personifies lust and the evils associated with it, up to a point of describing rape as a thing of beauty. Slan, my good friends, is none other than Lilithmon, but the more uncensored, hardcore version of it. Beelzemon is a demon lord representing Venus and the sin of gluttony. We're talking about a sin of overindulgence and overconsumption of anything to the point of waste. To give you the example of food, it would mean that you eat too expensively, too much, too soon, or too eagerly. You basically have no self-restraint and become a consumption machine. And to give you guys some reality in today's world, gluttony has kind of become society's most acceptable sin without you even knowing it, because in most cases the sin has proved tolerable, acceptable, and is even encouraged. Think of people trying to buy a bigger and bigger house without even being remotely financially capable of affording it. Think of how people are encouraged to hoard, meaning how closets are overflowed with clothes we don't even wear. Think of hookup culture, binge watching television. All are examples of gluttony, and that is what Beelzemon represents. Barbamon is a demon lord representing Saturn and the sin of greed. A sin of desire like lust and gluttony, however, greed is applied to an artificial, rapacious desire as well as the pursuit of material possessions. It is by some considered a sin against God because of that pursuit of temporal, material things instead of the eternity that God can give you. Actions that may be inspired by greed are hoarding materials or objects, thefts and robbery, using violence, trickery or manipulation. Belphemon is a demon lord representing Mars and the sin of sloth, a sin referring to a peculiar jumble of notions dating from antiquity and including mental, spiritual, pathological and physical states. The scope is quite wide to define sloth. Monks who become indifferent to their duties and obligation to God, when you have a lack of any feeling about self or other, when your mind state is that of boredom, rancor, apathy, these are all examples of the sin of sloth. A sin that is worse than laziness because it works as a double-edged sword. One edge is the abandonment of self. You walk away from the things your heart truly desires, you bypass opportunities, you don't feel like doing anything to change your situation or your experience. The other edge of the sword is self-absorption because you try to rationalize the where you are and why. In Japan there is a phenomenon called hikikomori. According to Japan, it is a psychiatric diagnosis where people avoid social content in an abnormal way, a total social withdrawal, and some call these patients sloth. Demon is a demon lord representing Jupiter and the sin of wrath. Probably the most simplest sin to explain, uncontrolled feelings of anger, rage, and even hatred. Wrath often reveals itself in the wish to seek vengeance. In its purest form, wrath presents with injury, violence, and hate that may provoke feuds that can go on for centuries. It means that wrath may persist long after the person who did another grievous wrong dies. So it really goes quite far. Feelings of wrath can manifest in different ways, including impatience, hateful misanthropy, revenge, and self-destructive behavior such as drug abuse or suicide. Leviamon is a demon lord representing Mercury and the sin of envy, yet another insatiable desire that can be described as a sad desire towards the traits or possessions of someone else. Envy is one of the most potent causes of unhappiness, bringing sorrow to committers of envy while sometimes giving them the urge to inflict pain upon others. This sin is also a crazy one because modern society is making sure you become envious. Imagine all your friends are buying the latest trend. Imagine the embarrassment if you're the only one missing out. You desire the traits of others, their status, abilities, or situations. You believe that others are so much luckier than you, smarter, more attractive, and simply better than you. My personal opinion, my good friends, please be happy for those around you who succeed, and I mean it. Don't be happy in the face and envious in your heart, because envious people tend to be either the most unhappy people in the planet or are only happy for a short time span before they start once more being envious of someone else. Keep going down that road and you will probably never be happy unless your envy is motivating you to work hard and fair. Lucemon is a demon lord representing the sun and the sin of pride. Pride is considered one of the heaviest sins because it has been associated directly with the devil. It is considered the original and most serious of the 7 deadly sins on almost every list. It is identified as dangerously corrupt selfishness, the putting of one's own desires, urges, wants, and whims before the welfare of other people. In more destructive cases, it is irrationally believing that one is essentially and necessarily better, superior, or more important than others, failing to acknowledge the accomplishments of others. Unchastity, anger, greed, drunkenness, and all of that are mere flea bites in comparison. It was through pride that the devil became the devil. Pride leads to every other vices. It is the complete anti-God state of mind. Now that we know what the 7 Demon Lord represents, I do again want to stress out that you guys are lucky that Digimon is more a family-friendly show than it is something else. Because I promise you, give Digimon to a developer like the late Kentaro Miura, God rest his soul, the man who wrote Berserk, and I promise Digimon would drive many nuts. The 7 Demon Lords are basically the God Hand in Berserk, and if you were to see the first appearance of the God Hand, it was traumatizing. Easily the most shocking moment in the history of anime. If you guys ever saw that, please comment in the comment section. I'd be pleased to read how you experienced it. But again, the 7 Demon Lords are the God Hand in a show that is kid-friendly for the most part, with subtle hints to gore. Now, many of you gave us really interesting comments with big explanations, and I absolutely adored it. The amount of effort you guys have put to answer this question is simply amazing and well written. We're going to go through the comments that had the biggest explanations. Some of your answers to describe what team would be the polar opposite of the 7 Demon Lords were based on what is known as the 7 Heavenly Virtues, which combines the 4 cardinal virtues and 3 theological virtues. 4 plus 3 equals 7, the same amount as the 7 members among the Demon Lords. The 4 cardinal virtues include prudence, which is the ability to govern and discipline oneself by the use of reason; justice, which is the quality of being just, righteous, or equitable, the ability to make decisions in terms of rewards and punishment by remaining impartial and objective; temperance, the moderation in action, thought, or feeling; fortitude is the mental and emotional strength in facing difficulty, adversity, danger, or temptation courageously. Among the 3 theological virtues you have faith, which is the strong belief in the doctrines of a religion or someone or something, based on spiritual and ideological conviction rather than proof; hope, which is a feeling of expectation and desire for a particular thing to happen; and charity, which is the voluntary giving of help. A pretty interesting list to say the least, but pay attention, the 7 heavenly virtues do not stand in opposition of the 7 deadly sins, but still a list that deserves to be mentioned. NightDriven En7 gave us an entire explanation of his choices. That is why I'll be quoting his entire comment, and it goes as such, and I quote, "The Angel Lord of Hope." While Seraphimon comes to mind first, as the anime does use Crest of Hope for Angemon's line, and even gets represented within the Digi Egg of Hope, I do not believe Seraphimon's description truly fits with diligence. In fact, I do not believe Seraphimon, despite being the closest to God by description, fits on this list anywhere. At least in terms of anything beyond the anime. So the anime Seraphimon, especially with the rebooted anime, it could be said that Magna Angemon, or Holy Angemon, and Seraphimon from Digimon Adventures can fit this very concept of diligence and determination that equals hope. To quote the DigiWiki that involves this topic, after Gravimon caught Takeru and Eldoradimon after they fell off Cloud Continent, and Gravimon and Angemon reminded Takeru about how he would not give up and about his shining hope, Holy Angemon emanated a Seraphimon aura around him, which then gave Eldoradimon wings, allowing it to finally return home. So if we are going over specific Digimon, a sole candidate that stands out amongst all others rather than a broad spectrum, then Takeru's Seraphimon would or could equal the Seraphimon of Hope. Angelic Lord of Charity. Now this is the section that gets messy. Kyupimon, an in-training Digimon that I did not see any form of Digivolution path right away, is the Digimon of charity. It wants to see everyone happy and is willing to do whatever it takes to see it done. But this little Digimon couldn't possibly stand against any of the Demon Lords, especially the Demon Lord of Greed. My next guess for a mega level would be Marine Angemon. If you have seen this pink little angel Digimon, you would know that it dislikes fighting, and its special attack being Ocean Love can make all enemies lose their fighting spirit, which could open the path for conversation and mediation. With another ability to empower allies and just spread love through firing hearts around the field, it is an easy fit for this role. While some see charity as giving voluntary of one's self akin to sacrifice, Marine Angemon would certainly appear to be a Digimon that would risk its life to stop a conflict if it was able. There is a third candidate, Ophanimon. While it might seem like it is odd for it to not face off against Lilithmon, a fallen Ophanimon, It is said to be the merciful side of the three archangels to represent mother love. I don't think it needs to be explained how being a merciful and motherly figure fits solely into the concept of charity. Angelic Lord of Justice. I might get flack here if I don't at least mention Mastemon and give it this particular role, as it has been known in its profile to being a mediator of sorts and balancing people out. In a way, it could be a representation of how to help, treat or fix others while they deal with their own struggles and mistakes. Being an entity generated by the powers of Jagras with a holy Digimon and unholy Digimon, Mastemon would know the struggles others would find in their lives and can best help them through. But I'm personally not too sure of this position, yet Mastemon would arguably be powerful enough to stand against Leviamon, whom is arguably one of the heavier hitters of the Demon Lords. I'm also not doing any form of due diligence to neglect that Marine Angemon could also fit in this role, as it is a creature of near pure kindness that hates conflict. Almost all of the same reasons why it would fit into charity makes it an equal fit for justice, to empower allies and to not want to fight against other people. And with it being a marine-based Digimon in the Diginet, it would have the arguably closest chance of encountering Leviamon should it ever awaken from its slumber. We're not talking about just any Leviamon, we're talking about the Leviamon whose snapping of jaws can instantly destroy other mega-level Digimon and whose size would be unfathomable to be able to guzzle the digital world. And it is a bit ironically fitting, Marine Angemon is a very small Digimon to have it go up against and stand a chance against Leviamon, whom could be one of the biggest it will ever face. Angelic Lord of Temperance. Is there a Digimon not more worthy of this position than Rasenmon? Here is a quote about the Digimon. Rasenmon's true form, which it attained after accepting its negative emotions without fearing them and regaining the courage it needed to believe in itself. Having broken free of the negative emotions that shackled it down, it is now reborn into this new form and is able to completely control the power that drove it berserk in the past. Its violent temperament has also faded, and it now sports a kind and gentle personality. Fits with a capital T for temperance. Even with the analogy, its previous forms are all about tempering and hardening their spirits, bodies, weapons. It just lines up so perfectly. The embodiment of temperance, worthy to be called an angel, even if it is no more than a beast Digimon. Angelic Lord of Fortitude. Voldurmon, and its holy aura of pure shine. It is surrounded in a shield that nullifies the attacks filled with evil intent, evil will. This concept fits with the idea of fortitude, of being able to move forward and turn the other cheek when needed, to not give in to wrath or anger or vengeance, though it is in a more physical sense. But one can imagine, due to how ancient this Digimon is, the amount of stories one could come up with to help create motivational speeches that would sound like the following: ignore the evil of others and keep yourself illuminated in your own light. Angelic Lord of Prudence. Imagine inhabiting a position of power and being forced to hand it over to another more qualified. How much would you have to hold back to not give in to jealousy or your hate? It was your position, you worked hard for it, but another more fitting arrives and you were asked to stand down. In the higher ranks of angels and holy beings, this would be a requirement, to temper your own desires and to show humility, patience and acceptance for what is to come. Leviamon is a fit for this position, having once owned the same position as Ophanimon and yet continues to strive to help the rest of the world. In Digimon Adventure, it helped fight against Millenniummon, and in Digimon Re-Arise, it fought to conquer its own darkness, to earn the power needed to try and prevent a great evil from destroying the digital world. While I'm sure there are other Digimon out there capable of filling this role, to have the knowledge of the digital world at your hands and to still keep a devoted and humbled mind is certainly noteworthy. Even if not powerful enough to face Lucemon on their own, not many can anyway. As a leader, it would have the tactical advantage in intellect to best know what decisions needed to be made. Angelic Lord of Faith. Believe it or not, Sakuyamon is actually a very strong fit thematically by its description. It is a shrine maiden, on the same level of priest or bishop as Magna Angemon, so it is bound to be seen as keeping itself reserved and pure to enact God's will. So, Sakuyamon is a highly devoted maiden akin to a nun that is capable of blessing and purifying areas and lands from evil. Sounds like it should have a fun time fighting Lilithmon. Unquote. To briefly sum it up, NightDriven's group that would directly oppose the 7 Demon Lords looks as such. For the position of Angelic Lord of Hope, there is Takeru Seraphimon. For the position of Angelic Lord of Charity, there is the rookie Kyupimon, or Marine Angemon, or Ophanimon. For the position of Angelic Lord of Justice, there is Mastemon and possibly Marine Angemon. For the position of Angelic Lord of Temperance, there is Lucemon. For the position of Angelic Lord of Fortitude, there is Valduramon, and for the position of Angelic Lord of Prudence, there is Racielmon. I certainly find it a very interesting list, and the reasons for having these particular Digimon in that spot certainly makes sense. I also like the idea of Kyupimon, who is even officially nicknamed the Angel of Charity. Too bad that the Digimon did not get a Digivolution line, because it would make total sense. And I believe that the Digimon would definitely evolve in another Angemon species type of Digimon. But unfortunately we did not get somewhat of a hint of its champion Ultimate Omega level. Make sure to write your opinions about this list in the comment section. NightDriven, well done, your list is solid. As has been told at the beginning of the video, the 7 Demon Lords have positions based on the 7 deadly sins. NightDriven used the 7 heavenly virtues as potential positions to oppose the 7 Demon Lords. It was certainly a very interesting choice to say the least. Did you know that certain virtues are directly opposed to the 7 deadly sins? I'm talking about the 7 capital virtues. They are enumerated as the following. The virtue of chastity. It is also known as purity. A virtue where one refrains either from sexual activities considered immoral or any sexual activity according to their state of life. These would directly oppose the sin of lust, meaning that the one occupying this position would directly oppose Lilithmon. The virtue of temperance is a virtue which can be seen as restraint or the habitual moderation in actions, thoughts, or feelings. The one occupying this position would directly oppose the sin of gluttony, meaning Beelzemon. The virtue of charity is the act of the voluntary giving of help to others. The one occupying this position would directly oppose the sin of greed, meaning Barbamon. The virtue of diligence is indicative of a work ethic, carefulness, and persistent effort or work is seen as a virtue and directly opposes the sin of sloth, meaning that the one who represents the virtue of diligence will directly oppose Belphemon. The virtue of kindness is all about acts of generosity, consideration, or concern for others without expecting praise or rewards. A virtue where one is genuinely happy for the success and accomplishment of another. A virtue which directly opposes the sin of envy, meaning that the one occupying this position would oppose Leviamon. The virtue of patience is the ability to endure difficult circumstances. It may involve perseverance in the face of delay, tolerance of provocation without responding in disrespect or anger, the ability to wait for a long amount of time without getting irritated or bored. The one occupying this position would probably face the sin of wrath, meaning demon. To finish, there is the virtue of humility, which is the quality of being humble and unselved, an outward expression of an appropriate inner or self-regard. The one occupying this position would directly oppose Lucemon, the representative of the sin of pride. Andreas Marrero gave us a big answer, so from now on I will quote his comment. And I quote, "For chastity I choose Racielmon. Really the only actual angel in this group. It knows just about everything through the kernel, and while it was once at the same station as Ophanimon, it stepped down and did not defile itself and continued to use its knowledge and wisdom to guide others with truth. Temperance. For this one I chose Canondramon because of its persistence, loyalty, and staying true to its duty even while suffering from many heavy losses. Despite being in a position of great power and authority with little to no oversight, the Digimon did not abuse its position or succumb to its power and even tried to steer a fellow officer away from vengeance. It remained to the very end a person of honor and immense self-control. Temperance includes self-control, honor, justice, and abstention, which is better embodied by Canondramon. For charity I chose Lilithmon. I've chosen for this one as it puts itself in danger to protect others and their homes while receiving nothing in return. Its powers comes from light, not the land, and therefore has no incentive to protect the environment, yet does so anyway. Diligence? For this one, Lilithmon is the one I've chosen. A Digimon formed when a great evil awakened and whose components work alongside each other, separate but as a single force. Both the shield and the sword have been persistent in their growth, not faltering to any obstacles placed in front of them. Being Legends Armed Digimon, they had to choose wisely on who wields them, implying that they have a strong sense of ethics that they have grown and remained truthful to, and doing so has lived a righteous life. Lilithmon was born from that righteousness and those ethics, and with 3 as 1 is truly diligent. Kindness. Belphemon, throughout its entire line, it has shown to forge strong bonds and helps others without any regard to its own wishes and self, even going as far as helping others to the very end in the last digital ice age. It is a truly kind Digimon. The call that is normally despised is ripe with compassion, and its master is one of integrity. Patience. With some internal debate, I've chosen Kongumon for patience. Being a servant of God from ancient times and without any association with Angel Digimon, it is someone that by nature is incredibly patient in not only searching and obtaining the Digi Egg of Miracles as a Warmon, where it surely suffered greatly but it stays on the earth instead of ascending, peaceful in its service to God and knowledge that God is always with him. With all that power, it could strike down those who commit wrongdoings, yet it uses its power to cast miracles, not calamities, and specializes in Shinto rituals, cleansing and renewing the person and giving them another chance. Kongumon has mercy on the wrongdoers and will continue to have mercy and stay on the earth until they improve themselves. It will continue until all Digimon are elevated in virtue. That is the embodiment of patience. Humility. Leviamon was chosen for this as its power is fueled by its altruism and fighting spirit, believing that everyone is capable of greatness. With all that terrifying power, it instead goes on rescue missions and offers aid at the drop of a hat. One of its pre-Digivolutions is Lord Leviamon, who opted to become a servant as opposed to living out its pride. Though they are still prideful, they ultimately work for others and their benefit, becoming Leviamon once they have overcome their pride. Leviamon does indeed have immense self-worth and expects the same for everyone else. However, that pride never goes to Leviamon's head, it never becomes arrogant, and so Leviamon fights with passion backed with reason. From the rare Leviamon to the altruistic and brave Leviamon, the king has humbled itself and works to raise others up, a symbol of humility. End quote. As Andres talked about the 7 capital virtues which directly opposes the 7 deadly sins, it would mean that the oppositions would look as such. Lucemon with the virtue of chastity versus Lilithmon who represents the sin of lust, Dramon with the virtue of temperance versus Beelzemon who represents the sin of gluttony, 2 Digimon that are heavily revolved around guns by the way, Lordmon with the virtue of charity versus Barbamon who represents the sin of greed, Lordmon with the virtue of diligence versus Belphemon who represents the sin of sloth, Belphemon with the virtue of kindness versus Leviamon who represents the sin of envy, Kongumon with the sin of patience versus Daemon who represents the sin of wrath, and to finish, Leviamon with the virtue of humility versus Lucemon who represents the sin of pride. Certainly a very interesting list with lots of Digimon I did not see coming, but certainly makes sense to see them put there. I like that there is a mix of diversity. It looks more like a list with positions that Digimon deserved to get, where we take into account their stories, what they did, and how they contributed. So Andres, my compliments, it is a well thought out list. Guys, make sure you write your opinions in the comment section. And before jumping to the next list, I do want to mention some Digimon suggested by Phoenix, who had more or less the same list as Andres, but with slight differences in terms of roles attributed to particular Digimon. I liked that Phoenix used some Digimon that were not mentioned but are certainly worthy of being brought up. For the virtue of diligence, Anubismon was selected because it supervises and guards the dark area where it seals away evil Digimon and reincarnates the good Digimon, a work which requires precision and the utmost diligence. Certainly a very fitting role for a Digimon with such a responsibility. For the virtue of charity, Chronomon Holy Mode was used because it named the protagonist as Tamer King due to it judging his heart. Now unfortunately there isn't much written for Chronomon, so to actually give it a reason to get the role of charity, it might be somewhat of a challenge. Personally, I do believe that Chronomon Holy Mode deserves a spot because it has that holy status and because it is a very powerful Digimon. Ultimately, sure, a Digimon may deserve a particular spot, but we still have to take into account the how they can contribute, because ultimately the 7 Demon Lords remain extremely powerful Digimon with legions awaiting their order. Chronomon on its own is certainly very powerful with its time abilities and with its holy status. I would say that these alone should be enough to give it a spot. And to quickly refer back to NightDriven's list, Cupimon was used for the virtue of charity, and certainly it is a nice choice in terms of how it would fit in its role, but in an actual battle I'm afraid that Cupimon would be pretty useless unless it would get at least an ultimate level if I were to be kind, but it would most definitely need a mega level if I had to be very serious and if we were to see the 7 Demon Lords as truly a big threat. Remember what I said about the 7 Demon Lords being the god hand of Berserk? We're not talking about just some random group, but about a threat that took the form of 7 powerful Demon Lords. Chronomon would be more than welcome to reinforce the team. Now, not all of your answers were big, some were very to the point, but still very interesting to take into account. I'm talking about Ultra Lucario 91's list. What I found very interesting is that the list wasn't focused on the sins and opposing virtues, but it was instead focused on the Digimon that would or could directly oppose one another when taking into account their backgrounds. Let me quote, "We already were shown 7 angels in Digimon Adventure 2020, they can be linked to the 7 Demon Lords. Seraphimon and Daemon. Seraphimon protects God's laws with patience without letting its wrath to go on a rampage. Ophanimon and Lilithmon. Ophanimon protects God's pure love, thus does not surrender to lust. Cherubimon and Belphemon. Cherubimon protects God's wisdom, thus does its work with diligence and understands the demerits of sloth. Racielmon and Leviamon. Racielmon knows all there is in the digital world from the kernel and obtained a divine amount of knowledge but kept its kindness and alerts others if something bad is going to happen out of concern for them, thus doesn't have any envy. Angemon and Beelzemon. Angemon persists in justice on battle while keeping temperance without being consumed by gluttony of power. Clavis Angemon and Barbamon. Clavis Angemon sacrificed itself to protect the Zenith Gate from people's greed to open it. Valdurmon and Lucemon. Both existed since ancient time. Pride is the highest sin over other sins, however Valdurmon's light purifies evil's will and sins." End quote. A short list, but most definitely an interesting one. Too bad the explanations weren't much bigger, but a very good list nonetheless. The 7 Demon Lords form a group, or rather a team, that only includes demonic type Digimon, with the exception of Leviamon maybe. And the list given by Ultra Lucario included basically only angelic type Digimon, with the exception of Valdurmon, although Valdurmon is still a holy Digimon. My opinion, I would say that I'd rather see Valdurmon oppose Leviamon, simply because this holy bird lives high above the stratosphere, while Leviamon lives in the depth of the net ocean near the dark area. I also loved the choice of Clavis Angemon opposing Barbamon, because that key Clavis Angemon holds, it is certainly one that Barbamon would love to get its hands on. I did talk about Barbamon's intellect in the Explaining Victory Greymon video. Barbamon and Clavis Angemon would be very interesting to see interact with one another. Ultra Lucario, you did a very good job. Guys, give your opinions about this list in the comment section. I will now discuss the last and my favorite list, which was given by Der Tiefkühlpizzatyp, who I will quote from now on, and I quote, "I know angel Digimon are more likely to deal with that, but the Digimon I chose are either holy or godlike anyway, or they can represent the virtue in full capacity. It is also another approach. I always like to think outside the box. I did not want to include Digimon that are already part of a group, like the Royal Knights, the Olympus 12 or Bantio, they are too busy anyway. Humility. Rasenmon, yes. It has a fury mode, but I'm talking about its true form, which it only attained after accepting its negative emotions. It can control all of its destructive powers, and it lost its violent tendencies and temperament, and instead acts gentle and kind. It can also gain more power by absorbing the energy of its comrades' emotions, but it can only use this energy to carry out actions it believes are right. This tells me that it questions its actions, or even that what it does is the right thing. Self-acceptance and questioning what you do is, in my personal opinion, a quite humble thing to do. Also, to improve yourself after you did something wrong shows humility. Trying to redeem yourself after you mess up is not easy. Succeeding at it shows you were serious about it. I even assume that Lucemon still feels kinda bad for what it did in its Fury mode. Kindness is for Shakamon. It is full of love, and the ordeals it imposes upon the digital world are also a sign of love. Tough love, if you will. It thinks fighting is meaningless, and 2 out of its 3 attacks are to exhaust or enlighten opposing Digimon. It also purifies evil. Shakamon reminds me of a somewhat strict but very loving mom. Patience. Patience is for Tactimon. As a general, and a Digimon with high intellect, it must be patient, as it is said that any army Tactimon leads will be victorious. Warfare may be a horrible thing, but Tactimon is probably the best at it. War also means to be patient and think everything through. It's also of the data attribute. I don't really consider it to be evil. Diligence. Diligence is for Achillesmon. It is always training and evolved by adapting to every kind of sports at all time. It also does not boast about its perfection in sports or its immense powers, which may be a sign of humility, but I think it comes rather from Achillesmon devoting all of its time to training. It may be a virus-type Digimon, but nothing was said about it being dangerous, controlling, or vicious. Charity is for Heavy Leviamon. It is stated to be kind-hearted and that it carries out rescue operations. It is also the first one to rush over to any Digimon that needs help and remove obstacles with its power. Since it is of the Leviamon species, I think it is safe to say that it never asked something in return and that it did those things out of the goodness of its heart. Temperance is for Mitamamon, a holy Digimon that may be visible but not touchable. It is the Digimon that guides the souls of good Digimon to heaven. It also almost never fights. It dismisses challenges from other Digimon. It hates conflict itself and only attacks those who went out of their way to anger it on purpose. At last, chastity is for Sakuyamon. As it is acting in God's will, it probably does not care about the admiration of others nor tries to seduce, unlike Lilithmon. It also has its Miko mode, in which it mainly exorcises evil spirits, again a religious duty. Chastity kind of fits. What I like about this list is that the Digimon in itself, or at least some of them, have some parts that could be or might be considered evil. Some of them are of the demon man type like Tactimon, and I like this dynamic because we do know that the demon lords are only evil and some of the members once were angelic beings who fell from grace for their own specific reasons. A battle of good and evil, to me personally, would seem a bit too generic. It would be too simple. But the fact that these Digimon, who were brought together by their Tiefkühlpizzatyp, it made me believe that there was sort of like a sense of emergency, where a group of experienced Digimon had to be formed in order to face the Demon Lord's threat. And I can see how these new recruits are somewhat struggling to represent their virtues, heck, some could even fail, and that would bring a story that is much more complex and compelling. A story that is much bigger than just light versus dark, because a war or a battle has never been simple. In fact, there is no right or wrong in a war. All there is are the interests of the involved parties that cannot find a common ground, and therefore they do battle. To me personally, it would be very interesting to see how the Demon Lords, the quote-unquote evil Digimon, could be more capable of acting as a team towards a goal in comparison to the new Lords of Virtue, chosen by their Tiefkühlpizzatyp, who, because of personal interests or personal reasons, might be tempted and therefore would act more as a group instead of a team. And I'm imagining how they would work their way towards cooperation. Very important, don't forget that we did theorize about the angelic Digimon and questioned why their eyes are always covered. We said that it might be to avoid being tempted to do something they were not meant to do, or to stop them from seeing what they were not meant to see. That would basically make them obedient Digimon, and in fact it would make them perfect Lords of Virtue. And I see this new group with different members. They have totally different backgrounds, and that could eventually work to their benefit, or maybe to their downfall. Hey guys, this is the end of the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. It was a very fun video that took much longer to be made because all your lists were very interesting. I'm sorry for those I couldn't include, but please feel free to share it again down in the comment section, that way everyone can see it. And if you feel like it, write your own lists in the comment section or give feedback about the lists already given. I'd be pleased to read them. I'd like to thank my Patreon followers for their contribution through the years. Your support really did help me through some very challenging times, so a big thank you. If you guys want to support the channel financially, please feel free to do so. Also, make sure to have a chat with the Digimon community on Discord. Link towards these different platforms are in the description box. And in case you guys are new, please make sure to subscribe and drop a like for the YouTube algorithm and for myself, that way I know my work is appreciated. Also know that all my videos are placed in particular Digimon playlists, which are always updated, that way you can catch up on newer and older videos.